Welcome to a PreventConnect podcast, where we explore the prevention of violence against women. This is a project of the California Coalition Against Sexual Assault.
So once again, everyone, my name is Ashley Klein-Jimenez, and I am with PreventConnect. PreventConnect is a national program of the California Coalition Against Sexual Assault. You're joining us for our PreventConnect campus web conference today, Reimagining Institutional Approaches to Ending Sexual Violence, How to Advance Organizational Change with the Culture of Respect Collective. I noticed a typo on this slide, so we'll get that fixed. PreventConnect is a national program of the California Coalition Against Sexual Assault, sponsored by the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. The views and information provided in this web conference do not necessarily represent the official views of the U.S. government, CDC, or CalCASA. So we do have some learning objectives for today. We're going to be looking at comprehensive prevention and the role that institutions of higher education play in that. We're going to identify some of the elements from the Culture of Respect Collective, and we have some of our guests today are going to really walk us through what the Culture of Respect Collective is, so we can learn more about that, and then we hope to have a discussion around how we all can advance organizational change across various types of institutions. So we're excited to have folks from different kinds of institutions of higher education to share with us today. So I wanted to just start by pointing to our PreventConnect national scan that we did a couple of years ago. And if you have been on PreventConnect web conferences before, you've probably heard me talk about this. But basically, we did a scan of what was happening across U.S. college campuses when it comes to sexual assault prevention. So we interviewed folks working on campus. We interviewed people who are working in partnership with campuses, stakeholders. We talked to folks, and what we found was that really we've identified this three-pronged approach to effectively address and prevent sexual, domestic, dating, and stalking violence on college campus. And so these three prongs are that we know that not only does the response have to be trauma-informed, but our prevention efforts need to be trauma-informed. We know that community collaboration and engagement is so vital to advancing sexual violence prevention on college campuses. This is not an issue that is only happening on college campuses, right? This is happening in communities, and so we know that we have to partner and work together. And then this last prong around comprehensive prevention is what we're going to probably be focusing the most on this call, and we'll go into a little bit more about what that means. But what I would love is to know what you all think about comprehensive prevention. So if you would head over to that text chat and let us know, what does comprehensive prevention mean to you? When you hear that term, what comes up? What does that mean to you? So if you would go ahead and respond to that question, we are going to come back to you once you've had a few moments to think about that and to answer. But right now I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to my colleague Tori to talk a little bit more about comprehensive prevention.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. So yes, we're super excited to be talking about comprehensive prevention and what that looks like across various types of institutions. So we recognize that a lot of you may or may not be familiar with the socio-ecological model, and we've adapted our own version of it here on your screen from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and from the American College Health Association. So we've added in that institutional factor layer that some socio-ecological models don't include, but it's important for us, especially as we're talking about ending sexual violence on our campuses and institutions of higher education, to keep in mind the organizational characteristics, rules, and regulations that play into that institutional level of prevention. A lot of us, I'm sure, are very familiar with the various individual factors like knowledge, attitudes, and behaviors, as well as the interpersonal and relationship factors within someone's immediate social network. But comprehensive prevention really involves engaging in prevention efforts across the entire system. So we're talking about societal factors in public policy, community factors, like how norms intersect with different organizations within our community, as well as the institutional, interpersonal, and relationship and individual factors. So like Ashley said, we're really going to be talking a lot today about how do we institutionalize prevention. And these are a few of the points that we had on that. So we want to recognize that prevention should be a priority in a campus's overall organizational framework, and that prevention is everyone's job. It's not just the folks who are in the response offices or the Title IX offices or the prevention offices, but it's everyone. It's all faculty, all staff, all students, and all campus community members have a job and have a role in preventing sexual violence. We also want to highlight that institutions should have a common language around prevention. We want to make sure that we're all understanding each other as we're going through this. And maintaining a commitment to primary, secondary, and tertiary prevention. So we want to make sure that we're supporting survivors, intervening early, promoting social norms change, and provide ongoing support through prevention efforts. And I'm going to hand it back to Ashley for the rest.
Great. So thank you all so much who went over to that text box and answered our first question. As Tori walked us through, when we talk about comprehensive prevention, it really means that we are planning and implementing things at every level of that socio-ecological model. So we're not just doing individual level presentations, but that we're also looking at how we can make organizational change, how we can make change around policy, that we want to have the biggest impact across campus so that we're really saturating the campus with sexual violence prevention efforts, messaging, and programming. And so some folks mentioned that collaboration and building coalitions with others is really important. Other folks really echoed that we have to work across the individual, community, organizational, and institutional levels. That we have, in order to be impactful, we really have to work at each level. But then I think some other things that I wanted to just highlight because I think they're really important was that so Jessica said it means awareness, education, training, ongoing, along with programming that is going to change social norms, which I think really echoes what Tori was saying. It's collaborative and it is systemic. And there are a couple of people that mentioned we have to make systemic changes. So thank you so much. And someone also brought up the importance of evaluation and assessment. Yes, that is super important. So one resource that's been helpful that I just wanted to point to is this document or report from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention on sexual violence on campus, strategies for prevention. And Tori just dropped the link there. If you are not familiar with this resource, you can download it. But basically, CDC over the last few years was really focused on looking at how do we prevent sexual violence on campus? What are the strategies? And so they convened a think tank and some state action planning meetings around campus sexual violence prevention. And so part of this resource is 5 components of campus sexual violence prevention that they identified. And these 5 components really highlight the key takeaway messages from both the think tank and the action planning meetings that CDC convened. And so one of the components is, not surprisingly, comprehensive prevention. So really the importance of utilizing strategies and approaches that are going to complement and reinforce one another across the social ecological model, as Tori was pointing to. We also know one of the components in this framework is infrastructure. So having the organizational systems and structures that are needed to effectively implement our strategies on campus. Another one is audience. That's another part of this framework. And audience really refers to the recipients, but also the observers of the prevention messages, the campaigns that go on. So it's kind of broadly referring to the target audience. Partnership and sustainability. Again, it's so important that we're developing relationships with community stakeholders and partners so we can really coordinate and align prevention efforts so that they're able to sustain themselves over time. And then finally, as was pointed to in the text chat, evaluation. It's essential that we identify what's working and what isn't working with programs, policies, and practices. So I think that these 5 components are, along with our 3-pronged approach, offer a really great framework for planning and implementing and kind of understanding like where the gaps are in campus and where things might be really strong. So I wanted to be sure to point to that. I also really wanted to hear from you all about what efforts are you engaging in to create organizational change? Or if you're not already doing this, what ideas do you have for creating organizational change on your campus? So maybe this is something that you're just not there yet, and that's totally fine. Everyone's at different places with prevention work, whether you're on a campus or in a community or at a state coalition. So either what are you doing or what ideas do you have that you think would be great to implement? So we will go ahead and give you a few minutes to respond to those and check back in. And in the meantime, I'm going to pass it back to Tori to introduce our guests.
Great, thank you, Ashley. So we have a ton of amazing guests with us today. We have folks that we're going to be hearing from shortly from the Culture of Respect at NASPA, as well as Kristen Rowe from Montgomery College, Nikki Brower from Illinois State University, and Tolu Tuwao from Pacific Lutheran University. So we'll hear from all of them really soon. But first, I wanted to introduce Ali Gross-Corman and Cerise Greenstein of the Culture of Respect at NASPA. And they head up this awesome Culture of Respect collective, and we're going to be hearing more about the tools that they use in order to advance organizational change on institutions of higher education. So, Ali, I'm going to hand the podium off to you.
All right. Thank you so much for that introduction. Can everybody hear me okay? The audio is all right?
We can hear you.
Yep. Great. Oh, always good to check before you just start launching in. Well, thank you, everybody, for being here today. We're so glad that you were able to join us to talk a little bit about the Culture of Respect. I'm going to go ahead and jump in and get us started, and then I'm going to pass it over to Cerise in just a bit, and she's going to kind of walk you through the second half of our first couple of slides. I want to start by talking about something that our host queued up so beautifully for us, which is this focus on kind of bringing public health approaches to this effort that we are all engaged in to end campus sexual violence. And the 3 things that you're seeing on your slide right now are kind of foundational to everything that Culture of Respect does. Cerise and I are both public health professionals, and we bring that work with us every day in our work to help colleges and universities end campus sexual violence. So what that means for us is using a public health framework in applying that to everything we do, using evidence-based approaches to addressing campus sexual violence. And as I'm sure many of you who are working in this space know, we don't have the strongest evidence base for every piece of this puzzle yet. So in the areas where we are still developing an evidence base or evidence-based practices, we've turned to experts in the field who we work with, a multidisciplinary board of advisors and folks who have spent their whole careers dedicated to addressing campus sexual violence to bring their input to the picture as well. And lastly, we have a real focus on bringing everyone to the table. I think that's something that came up a lot in the answers that you all gave to what does prevention look like. I saw a lot of comments about a collaborative approach and making sure that we're thinking about our campus, our community, our individuals, all of those pieces. And we're very much on the same page with that. If we are going to, really turn the tide on sexual violence in this country, and I think we all feel like now more than ever that is critically important, it's going to take more than just 1 or 2 of us on a campus. It's going to take all of us coming together and working collaboratively to make that happen. So we're here to talk to you today about a program that we run through Culture of Respect at NASPA, which is the Student Affairs Professional Association, called the Collective. And in short, this is a really ambitious 2-year program that is bringing together institutions of higher education who are really dedicated to this issue, who are really committed to ending campus sexual violence, and bringing them through this very rigorous process of self-assessment and creating targeted organizational change. So when we talked a little earlier, or when people brought up the idea of systems change, we are very much on board with you that this is going to take a system-wide change if we are going to make an impact on this problem. So we're going to break this down for you today, this program down into kind of three major areas, three focus areas of how the collective works and what it entails. And that includes a dedication to addressing sexual violence, this process of rigorous self-assessment, and making targeted organizational change on your campus, so systems-based changes. I'm going to turn it back over to our friends at PreventConnect.
Great. So I wanted to just, and thanks for that, Allie. I wanted to just kind of reiterate what folks are saying from the last chat on how you're making organizational change. And so Melina said that in Rhode Island, colleges are really coming together to establish cohesion around preventing sexual violence through policies. I was also then looking to see if there are other states who are doing statewide collaborations of students. So if anyone knows of any of those, let Melina know. There's also some conversation around inviting stakeholders and partners to be a part of Title IX committee or meetings. The importance, getting folks from different departments on campus, so like athletics and Greek systems involved and committed to prevention. Carolyn says that's vital. So those are some of the things that folks were saying. And we do have another text chat question for you. So we'd love to know what challenges you faced when making organizational change on your campus, or what barriers you feel are preventing you from making kind of this wider change and getting folks across your campus on board with prevention. So feel free to let us know in that text chat, and thank you again for everyone who's participating in that. So I am going to go ahead and pass this back to you, Allie.
Great, thank you. All right, so we are going to talk a little bit about targeted organizational change, and one of the reasons that we asked this question about the types of changes that are challenging to make, or what challenges you have in making change on your campus, is because we work with a lot of campuses and we see many different barriers. We know that there are a lot of reasons it can be challenging to make organizational change, one of which is oftentimes just getting that momentum together. So we want to talk a little bit about how this program is going to help make that momentum happen on your campus, and also how we're going to help focus the types of changes that you are going to make as an institution through this program. So when we talk about making systemic organizational change, we want to think about, obviously, all the different variables that are at play at an institution. We don't want to kind of focus our efforts willy-nilly on making change. We want to be sure that we're being really thoughtful about what kind of change we want to be making. And this kind of visual that you're seeing in front of you, sometimes I call it a helix, so that's probably not the best, most clinically accurate representation of what this is, maybe an atom, I don't know. But what you're seeing here is the 6 pillars of our core blueprint. These are 6 areas where we really get institutions to think critically about the types of changes that need to be made on their campus. It helps provide kind of a holistic 360 view in terms of what's happening on a campus and where you might want to focus your targeted organizational change. So obviously prevention is, and prevention education programs are one really important part of a systemic approach to prevention on a campus for sexual violence, but there's a lot of other factors at play as well. We want to be thinking about what types of supports are in place for survivors. We want to think about our policies and how those are written and disseminated, and are they clear? We want to be looking at how transparent we're being about the issue of campus sexual violence. Is this something that we acknowledge is happening because it is happening on every campus, or is this something that we're trying to shy away from? We would be in favor of schools talking about this, because you're not going to solve a problem that you're not talking about. Are we bringing all of the different folks together at the table? That's our school-wide mobilization pillar. And lastly, self-assessment. So are we really thinking critically about what we're doing on campus, and if it's working and if it's being impactful? And so making sure that we have the data to make sure that we're doing the things that are working. So when we think and work with institutions about making targeted organizational change, we ground it in these 6 areas, these 6 pillars. And we really try to be as specific and direct and concise about making organizational change as we can with institutions. One of the things that we really focus our energy in is making sure that institutions are clear about the changes that they want to see happen. So what you're looking at here are some examples of objectives that institutions who are working through the collective have set for themselves. These types of objectives track back to those 6 pillars that I talked about, and they really try to drill down on the types of change that an institution is working to make. And some of these changes might be small, they might be simple, they might be making information more easily accessible on a website so that someone who is looking for it can find it easily. Or they might be a really heavy lift, like revisiting an entire sexual misconduct policy, making it more easily understood, making it more accessible. So we really try to help institutions think specifically and concretely about the types of changes they want to be making. I'm going to turn it over to Therese now to talk about another facet of the program.
Thank you, Allie. So Allie helped start explaining the program by identifying what our vision is for organizational change. And now I'm going to talk a little bit about how we get there. So the program is really grounded in a self-assessment process, and the tool we use for that self-assessment is the core evaluation. So the core evaluation is a custom tool that Culture of Respect created to help institutions take inventory or measure how they're doing in each of those 6 areas of the blueprint. And what we do with folks who join the collective is we ask them to bring together a group of multidisciplinary professionals, students, faculty, staff from across your institution to take this assessment. So it's a survey that asks your, it's a survey that,
I'm going to go ahead and mute everyone's lines again because I'm hearing some background noise. So I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to have you press *6 to unmute yourself. Give me 1 second.
Great. Thank you.
All guests have been muted. You can unmute your line by pressing *6.
Okay, Therese, you can press *6.
Great.
There you go.
Great. Okay, so campuses who join the program bring together a group of colleagues from across their institution, as well as students and maybe community members as well. And we ask them to take the survey. And the survey does 3 really important things. The first is it's a detailed inventory of what your institution is doing across those 6 areas. So we know even at a small institution of higher education, our schools are complex. And there's a lot of different strategies we have for addressing violence and a lot of different departments and programs that are involved. And so taking the core evaluation helps you get everything in the same place, write it down, and make sure you're clear about what's happening in each program with each strategy. So that's the first really important goal of taking the survey. The second is that it's a really great learning opportunity. So let's say I'm a Title IX coordinator and I come to the table with a very clear idea of what our Title IX policies are and how we implement them and how we communicate them. But I'm going to invite the director of athletics and some really passionate faculty and some student activists. And they're all going to bring expertise about what they do on campus. And so maybe they don't know quite as much about Title IX, but they're going to know about student activism. And they're going to know about, let's say, our annual security report. And when we come together and take the survey together, we can all learn something and bring something to the table. And so we hear consistently from folks that when everybody comes together to go through the survey, there's a lot of learning that happens. And not only learning about what's going on at your campus, but what you could be doing at your institution. So when we ask you, hey, does your institution publish a Title IX report every year? You may say, no, we don't, but actually that is something that we could consider. Then there's a third goal of taking the survey as part of the program, and that's to use it as a benchmarking tool. So all the participants of the program take the core evaluation when they enter, and then at the end of the program, so somewhere between 18 and 24 months later, you'll take it again, and you'll be able to see changes and document advancements and improvements in your institutional efforts to address sexual violence. So here you can see a little snapshot. All our participants receive an individualized link to the survey that they can use to answer all the questions, and it's customized for you. So if you don't have graduate students, you'll skip through those questions. And once you complete the survey, you get a really detailed report from us that provides feedback in a few ways. So that quantitative feedback that I spoke about, that's really about comparing to your own progress, as well as qualitative feedback on strengths and opportunities, 2 checklists that compare your responses to federal laws and guidance, as well as best practices in the field, and also some comparative data. So how do your responses compare to your peers across the country? And that report is really going to drive the next step of the process, which is identifying what your campus wants to do to expand, improve institutional efforts to address violence, and how you're going to get there. And so we walk schools through a process of using this report and other information that you have about gaps and strengths of your institution's approach to identify what you want to do next. So we're going to hear soon from some of our participants about how this process went for them. And Allie at the end is also going to walk you through a little more specifically the timeline for how each of these components goes. But before we do that, we're going to talk a little bit about dedication. So we are so humbled and proud to be able to work with all of these institutions. So this first slide, these are all institutions in our first cohort. You can actually see the logos from all of our colleagues who have joined us today from Montgomery Community College, Illinois State, and Pacific Lutheran. And you can see a few things here. Well, we've got a lot of schools that we work with, which we're really proud of. We've also got different types of institutions, state schools, art schools, schools from across the country, big schools, small schools. And so there's a couple cool things about that. One is that part of the programs that are institutions are able to learn from each other. And they can both learn from their own commonalities. Let's say liberal arts institutions really getting together on an issue that affects them specifically, but they can also learn across differences. So maybe at Clemson, they didn't think something that would work at Texas State might make sense on their campus, but then they heard about what's going on at Oregon Tech, and they said, you know what, we didn't think that would work for us, but we're going to try it. And the last thing that's pretty cool is that it demonstrates that the program isn't meant for one type of institution. It's really flexible, and it's meant to help your institution figure out where you are and where you want to go. And so we're really proud of that. And now we're going to hear from some of our friends that we work with in the collective. But I think we've got one more question for you.
Great. So just before I hand it over, there were a couple things that came up from folks about barriers that I wanted to just touch on. So one of the things that was being talked about in the text chat was there's really not a lot of resources for commuter schools, schools with non-traditional populations, community colleges. You know, a lot of times when we talk about campus sexual violence and there's resources for campus sexual violence, it's for institutions that have dorms or, right, they have a freshman class. It's not for folks who maybe are returning to school or who maybe are a little bit older, that maybe are presenting with other issues happening outside of sexual violence, like intimate partner violence. So I think that is one barrier, that there's just kind of a lack of resources. I think someone else said that, Nolan said that administrators kind of see sexual assault prevention as one meeting that freshmen go to, and that's it. There's no follow-up, and we absolutely know from the best available evidence and best practices that that is not going to change culture or impact campuses the way that we need to. There was also some conversation from Kelly talking about working with international study abroad organizations, and so having students from other countries with different cultures, you know, and really the need to kind of break down like sexual assault the norms and the laws in the U.S. So those are just some that I wanted to touch on. There's also a lot of changes. Jessica mentioned, you know, being the only person, there's no infrastructure in place. So there's a lot of barriers, and I think that, you know, hopefully some of us have been through some of these and we found ways to work around them. So that would also be wonderful to share. We'd also like to know, I'm going to introduce our next guest, Tolu, in 1 minute, but we'd love to know what tools you've used or are looking to use to advance organizational change on your campus. So I already have folks who are talking about data collection, needs assessment. We have other things. Feel free to pop them in the text chat. I am going to go ahead and introduce Tolu Taiwo. Tolu, am I saying your last name correctly?
You just did. Taiwo is how you say it. Thank you for checking.
Great. I should have asked you that earlier. But Tolu is the Assistant Director of the Center for Gender Equity at Pacific Lutheran University. And Tolu, I'm going to go ahead and give you the podium. And we are just so excited to hear from you about the Culture of Respect Collective and how it's impacted your work on campus.
Yes, thank you. So again, my name is Tolu Taiwo, and I'm the Assistant Director at PLU Center for Gender Equity. Just a little bit about what that means. I do a lot of our prevention work on campus, so kind of looking at what we just talked about and ways to bring that work to students, staff, and faculty. I do a lot of our active bystander training, and that actually fits into kind of how I got jumped in to be the campus person for this program. I do some assessment and work with our students, and then I do a lot of outreach to the community to figure out how we can have conversations about sexual assault prevention and advocacy programs as well too. And just some background about PLU. So we're a school of about 3,000 students in the Pacific Northwest, near Tacoma to be specific. And we're a private liberal arts college with a Lutheran focus, so the PLU, Pacific Lutheran University piece, is important to us. We're also a PWI, so we're a predominantly white institution. I think it's important for me to mention all these things, both to just talk about who our student demographic is, and so that's really important, but also we do a lot of conversations around who is maybe left out of the table when we talk about sexual assault prevention and advocacy and some activism as well too. So all those things are important for me to list and mention, and just give a snapshot of what PLU looks like. We became a Culture of Respect campus maybe a year and a half ago, I think it is, when the program first started. And it was really due to a lot of our upper division and our president and the leadership there. They saw an email because we're involved with NASPA, and I know that the NASPA also connects with this program as well too. And they emailed our office saying that we should do this, like we're really excited. We do a lot of good work, but we want to maybe have some better ways of assessing our programs and our initiatives as well too. So I know that some schools, there's a lot of folks who this comes from, maybe like coordinators and assistant directors. We're really fortunate to have our presidents and our vice presidents really believe in doing culture of respect. So that was really helpful for us as well too. We also do a lot of work and did a lot of work with It's On Us, and we also, in this program, there's an option to partner, I think, with the It's On Us national organization as well too. And so before we even became a Culture of Respect collective school, we had a lot of students who loved It's On Us and did a lot of work with them and wanted to maybe talk a little bit more about how to be an active bystander and have that organizational support. So we were invested in that as well too, and so that's one of the reasons why we joined as well. And again, I think I said this, but we really wanted a way to assess our programs from an outside perspective, and so we thought we were doing some good things. We thought we were also just needed to update some things, and so we really invested in. That's why we joined as well too. So these are the reasons why they were most attractive to us. I want to spend a little bit of time too talking about our campus leadership team. So one of the things that we have to do is to put together a core team of folks who are invested in the Culture of Respect process. And initially, I was kind of thinking around of who would be on this team, and I got a lot of support from Therese and Allison with this. And we already were committed to having a Title IX working group. And with Allison and Therese, we kind of combined that group to be also part of the campus leadership team, and this was really helpful. I think the Title IX group had me for a year or two before we were a Culture of Respect campus, and so it was helpful to have a team already in place that did a lot of this work, and it was just natural for us to combine, I think, the efforts, if that makes sense, so not to recreate the wheel, which was very helpful for me because I was worried that folks would have to pick and choose between the two, so that was nice. I have the members listed here in the team. The stars are folks who aren't necessarily often on the Title IX working group, but have come in to help me with Culture of Respect collective pieces, and that's been really helpful to bring them to the team. And so I have all the folks there, and I also want to highlight that we have some good group of undergrad students too who do this work with us. It's not just me, but it's everybody on this team, and we have some great student buy-in. I think combining the two, so having our Title IX group also be our campus leadership team, again, worked really well. It saves people, I think, time. We talked a lot about assessment and talk a lot about our programming anyway in that group, and so that was really helpful. There was already a group dedicated, and so that was nice. I think if folks are thinking about joining and thinking about how you might gather a team together and have already a campus leadership team that does this work, something that I think to keep in mind is just to make sure that oftentimes there are multiple agendas, if that makes sense. And so I think the only, not downside, but the only thing that I think is a little bit hard sometimes if our Title IX coordinator has something that we really need to talk about, we might have to have another meeting to talk about our, I think, our Culture of Respect assessment pieces. And so that really has happened, but we had a couple meetings where we just had a lot to talk about because there were a couple different things going on campus. And so I could see how having maybe another group and a campus leadership team separate might be helpful as well too. But for us, it's worked pretty well. And the last thing I want to mention, I think, is just some of the things that we've been able to change in our goals and just why I would recommend this program and why it's been helpful for us. So I think it was, again, like the first and foremost, we really wanted to have a way that we can assess what we were doing, especially our policies, from an outside perspective. I think a couple months before we formally joined, we had a couple of student forums that were really helpful, but a lot of students felt that some of the ways that we did the work was just like inaccessible, and the way that we maybe marketed our services, both in our center and Title IX and some other offices that we partner with, was just not helpful. And so we were really looking for a tool to help us maybe do the work better. We were really committed to that, and so that was helpful for us as well too. And so a lot of what we've accomplished and has been really helpful was how we got on the same page with our policies. And so there are a lot of, as we all know, like, our Center for Gender Equity isn't the only office that does prevention work, or shouldn't be. And we also partner a lot with our student rights and responsibilities. And so a lot of the different offices, we followed a lot of the policies that we needed to help students, but we didn't know what each other did or what was posted. And so this assessment really helped us kind of get back on track and be cohesive throughout all campus with our prevention efforts and our policies, which is really nice. So it got us on the same page. I added a picture of the health center as well too, because I think we talked a lot about policies over there in MOUs. That was the first time we really got to connect. I think so this was really helpful for that. I think also too, a lot of this program helps me, particularly as a professional in this field and in this work. There are a lot of peer small schools that join the program, and I think that we are fortunate to be next to a peer school. In Tacoma, we're next to UPS, but it was helpful to see how other schools did work as well too. And so we have a lot of emails for folks who are in the program, and it was helpful to kind of connect to some other folks as well too. One of the things that we're hoping to also change that the assessment is helping is our multi-tiered education, and that was mentioned, and that was really helpful to kind of show our gaps that we had in our programs as well too. We do a lot of good work the first year, but we kind of are figuring out how to also keep students engaged and keep that learning really strong for the second, third, fourth, and year and beyond as well too. I know I talk really, really fast, and so I don't know if I left out anything or if you have any questions, but if you don't get asked them today of me, my email is caiwoca@plu.edu. And again, like I'm one of the, I think we're one of the smaller schools on the list, and so if you are a small school and you're interested or have other questions, especially, you can contact me as well. And I think that's it.
Thanks, Talu. So we'll go ahead and get your email address. Oh, thank you, Allie, in the text chat. And if you have questions for Talu that you want to pose here, I know, Talu, you have to run, but we can make sure that we get those questions to you as well. So thank you so much for sharing, and thanks for being here. We're really appreciative of that. So I want, of course. I want to turn it over now and introduce you all to our next guest, Kristen Rowe. Kristen is the Deputy Title IX and Youth Protection Coordinator for Montgomery College. So Kristen, how are you? Thanks for being here. You now have the podium. And Kristen, you might, I muted everyone again. Yep, there you are.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
All right, thank you. So, well, that was actually fascinating listening to Tolu, but I'm going to swing everyone far to the East Coast over to Maryland now to give you some perspective on what we're doing here at Montgomery College. Here's a little bit of information about who we are. There's our MC Raptor, and we're very proud of our Raptor. We don't have a name for him or her yet. We're actually having a big college-wide competition now to name him. So next time you bump into me, I may have a name for our Raptor. But we are a two-year community college institution in Montgomery County, Maryland, literally just right outside of DC. We're a fairly large institution. We have about a combined credit and non-credit enrollment of about 60,000 students across three very, very diverse campuses, one that could be considered very urban, one that's suburban, and one that's not quite rural, but they really do have very different characters and cultures on all three of them. And we are an extremely diverse institution, and just recently, in August, the Chronicle of Higher Ed did a survey of student populations at community colleges, and we ranked number 7 for diversity. And interestingly, all of the top 6 were in Hawaii. So we are the most diverse in the continental U.S. So that's a new label that we're trying out these days. And we are part of the first cohort of the Culture of Respect Collective. And so today I'm going to talk a little bit about what brought us to the point of seeking out the culture of respect and what appealed to us about it and what made us as an institution decide that it was a good time and a good fit for where we were. Sort of similar to the previous institution, we had a Title IX advisory group that was in place, and we had a bunch of really dedicated individuals with some really good expertise who had come together around 2013, I think, to start to develop or update things like the sexual misconduct policy and looking at what sort of compliance requirements there might be for campuses, sort of also looking to maybe position themselves as an institution to maybe apply for a grant through the U.S. Department of Justice, so looking at what we might need to do in order to be a good candidate for that. Working on establishing MOUs with the community. So there was a lot of good work going on. And in addition to having done a campus climate survey, which I can't go into too much today, but that really provided us with some good data about our students' experiences with sexual misconduct and also really what their level of awareness was about what resources would be available to them, how they might report, and what kinds of remedies there might be. And so with all of that, we still also kind of felt stuck. There was this sense that, well, we've got some things in place and we're doing well, but how do we really move the needle and improve our campus response to sexual violence? We had some good prevention programs. We had purchased a training module for prevention education that many folks are probably familiar with, but these efforts felt a little disjointed, and we knew that we weren't maximizing what we had, and that certainly there were some gaps in either who we were reaching or whether or not what we were doing would be considered truly comprehensive enough. So we started to have some discussions about how do we institutionalize our practices that to this point kind of relied on some really good people stepping forward to do the work. So for example, our BITV program really relied on people who were doing one job for the college but then would volunteer to do training. Or we really have great faculty in the counseling department who would make themselves available to do things because they had the interest. But there was no formal commitment as an institution that any of these things would continue. So our fear was, well, if these people win the lottery and don't come back to work tomorrow, what are we left with? So we really were seeking ways to formalize what we were doing. And we really also knew that we were stuck on some things that we just couldn't move forward on. And there were a lot of us who wanted to see a requirement for all incoming students to do prevention education, and we just were unable to get all of the players to commit to that. So we were really looking for a way to get some momentum on a shared vision. We also were seeking to demonstrate to our campus leadership both our strengths and our opportunities, and really to get their attention. And as I said, we felt really proud about some of the work we were doing, but it seemed at times that maybe there was no full appreciation for all of the work that was happening. And so we knew that in order to get our leadership's attention as an academic institution, we would probably be best if we were able to come up with some really good data to sort of quantify our strengths and also our gaps. And so we were looking for something that would help us to sort of take a high-level overview and snapshot of what we were doing so we could very clearly and concisely present that to leadership when we had requests or recommendations for things that we might like to see happen in our institution. And, you know, I think sort of layered underneath all that too is also, you know, we knew we needed to build a case for requesting additional resources, and really that was, we knew we needed some additional funding, and we wanted to have a strong argument when we came forward with that. So we knew with all of this that we needed to, or we would benefit from something that was a structured process that had peer benchmarking, guided project management, and imposed timeline and measurable results. These were very concrete tools that we knew intuitively would help us to move quickly and strategically towards realizing our goals. Peer benchmarking was huge for us. Anytime we went forward to leadership to ask for anything, whether it be a policy change or a resource, the first question was always, have you peer benchmarked this? And come back to us with information about what other community colleges are doing, or what other colleges in Maryland are doing, or what other institutions of the same enrollment size are doing. And so we knew that in order to have a valid and strong argument for what we wanted to do, we really needed to make sure we were looking very closely at what our peers were doing. We also knew that because we felt a little stuck, we would probably benefit from attaching ourselves to some sort of a timeline that was not controlled by ourselves to really have the mileposts put out in front of us by a third party so that we would be accountable for reaching them, and also the accountability of a cohort. We liked the idea of knowing that there were 20 other institutions that were also taking an assessment at the same time, and that we're working on the development of goals at the same time, and that we're working on implementing at the same time. So that really was this sense of cohesion and momentum, really. And we found that that kept our advisory group on task. Okay. There we go. So in the end, really what we were looking for was partnering with an external partner for that third-party perspective and the cohort construct and an evidence-based model. And that's really all we found in the culture of respect. To be honest, when we first looked at it, we knew that this is what we needed. It didn't take long to sell it to our advisory group or to our leadership, because we sort of knew that this is what we needed before we even came across it. So the combination of the expertise that you get not only from the staff at NASPA, but from the cohort and peer group was a great resource for us, and really being able to benchmark against other institutions to have that opportunity to say, you know what, here are our strengths, and this is something we can be really proud of, and maybe somebody can learn from us in this sense. But here's our weaknesses and our gaps, and the good news is we know someone who has filled that gap in their institution, and we can apply that here. And certainly, lastly, we all in higher ed, I think, have an appreciation for using evidence-based work and making sure that our efforts are data-driven, and because that's really baked into what this framework and this process provides, we knew that that would be something that we could get a lot of buy-in. So one of the, as we're coming to the end of our time in cultural respect,
we're finding that our committee is already asking, well, what's next? What are we going to do? So we're excited that we'll be doing our final evaluation in November, and we'll get to see what kind of progress we've made throughout the project period. So we're really looking forward to that. And we already have agreement in our advisory group that we're going to continue using the same subgroups that were established through the Culture of Respect Collective. So now we have a dedicated prevention education subcommittee, we have a dedicated evaluation subcommittee, and all around those 6 pillars. And while the membership in those may change over time, the structure we found really works well for us, and it's something that we're going to continue to use. And lastly, we've got some good ideas that came out of our experience but are things that we weren't able to accomplish in our project period. So we're actually looking at applying internally to our own institution for an innovation grant. And that has gotten our entire advisory group really excited, because we feel like we've done all this work, we've done the evaluation, we've made some progress on some goals, but we have this wish list item that we would like to go for, and we're going to use that momentum to apply for an innovation grant. So that's just starting to come together at this point. So that's our high-level snapshot of why we chose to engage in Culture of Respect, and really what the benefits have been for us participating in it. Thank you.
Thank you, Kristen. That's super great to hear about all the advancements you've been able to make at Montgomery College with the tools that you gained from Culture of Respect, and with the great community that you built on your campus around prevention too. So thank you for sharing that. Before we move on, I wanted to do a quick report back on our last text chat question about tools and resources that people use or would use to advance organizational change on their campuses. So as Ashley mentioned before, we had people responding early about data collection and doing needs assessments, and then Jessica and Cerise were sharing resources from the University of Texas system, and one of those is a class evaluation, which Cerise has provided a link for in the text chat. Thank you, Cerise, and thank you, Jessica. I also wanted to highlight a few other things that Jessica pointed out. It looks like in Texas, y'all have a lot of, and I can say y'all because we're talking about Texas, it looks like y'all have a lot of cross-sector collaboration going on as well, and open and consistent communication too. So that's super exciting to see that, and thank you so much for sharing. We hope that others are getting a lot out of the text chat too. So for our next text chat question, before we introduce our final guest, we want to hear from you all what partnerships you think are crucial for institutionalizing prevention on your campus. So the question is on your screen. It's also in the text chat. I'll give you a moment to marinate over that while we introduce our next guest. We have with us Nikki Brower, and Nikki is the Director of Health Promotion and Wellness in the Division of Student Affairs at Illinois State University. Nikki has also provided her email below, and we can also add that into the text chat. So I will pass the podium over to Nikki.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Perfect. So thanks, everyone. Like we've said, I'm Nikki Brower with Health Promotion and Wellness at Illinois State University. And just a little bit about our institution is we are a state institution, and we were the first public institution in Illinois, established in 1857. And actually in our roots, we were a normal school. So we are really known for developing teachers in the state of Illinois and beyond. And so we still maintain that emphasis on teaching. And as you can see, our breakdown of undergraduate students is around 18,400, 2,300 graduate and doctoral students, about 3,500 faculty and staff. And we are also a predominantly white institution located in central Illinois, so about 2.5 hours south of Chicago and 2.5 hours north of St. Louis, Missouri. So I like to just tell everyone that as well. Another thing about Illinois State is that I think the culture here is important to note as I begin to talk about our journey, and that we're a very relational campus. And so this is kind of a foundation for how we work here, real collaborative and together. And so anyway, also health promotion and wellness, we are a campus wellness unit. So we serve students, faculty, and staff. And so it's kind of a tall order. But, you know, we're small but mighty, I say. So we are also participants of the first cohort of Culture of Respect. And something else I want to share with you is that before July of 2015, the prevention work around gender-based violence and survivor services was actually delivered by our colleagues in student counseling services. So in spring of 2015, we were having conversations around the work, and our vice president supported the expansion of primary prevention work in the area around sexual violence, dating violence, stalking. And so he shifted the responsibilities to health promotion and wellness based on the work we were already doing in primary prevention of the other areas of our responsibility. So this was a new content area for our staff. And we welcomed our first full-time staff member that July of 2015, and that's really where I would say our adventure began. And so in the first year, we researched, we planned, we tried to network, and began to build how we would actually approach and be able to do this work and do it well, because we knew that it was going to take some care and compassion. And so we really wanted to be kind of slow and steady as we implemented things. And so, again, it was a new content area for us, and we were really only beginning understanding the complexities around, I like to say, violence work. And so it's been taking us a while, and but it's good. So in 2016, we welcomed a new vice president to student affairs. And I reported to him for the first 7 months of his term, and right away I began talking about our bystander empowerment programs and how I really believed to further this work we need to kind of reach a broader audience on campus. And so as we were all looking for ways to bring campus stakeholders together to address the work around sexual violence, we stumbled across Culture of Respect Collective and its involvement in part of NASPA. So our vice president is a past president of NASPA, and that's really all I had to say. He said, NASPA? And I said, yes. And he said, well, let's apply. And then they actually funded our participation in the Culture of Respect Collective. What actually appealed to us in health promotion and wellness was the public health framework. It really resonated with our staff, and we knew that if we used that public health approach, we would be able to do the work and do it well. So it was comfortable to us. It was what we knew, but it also gave us the confidence to begin to build what I think is some really good work around this area, and from some real compassionate and driven folks. So I'm going to talk a little bit today about our campus leadership team and the broad representation that we sought and obtained through the Culture of Respect process. And so as you can see, first and foremost on my slide, we've got our students there. And so, of course, everything is central to students, right? But something that I was considering as I was building this team was leveraging relationships that were built over the years and trying to get them all to the table. And I knew that as an office, we'd be able to kind of build this coalition and make it strong. And so when I reached out, I really did it person by person, phone call by phone call. I reached out to department heads, directors, and deans, just trying to start at a level where I needed engagement in order for this to really work, and to also elevate the importance. And so also, as I invited folks to the table, I considered their areas of research, women's and gender studies, criminal justice sciences, and all of that actually kind of helps add the expertise to the team, because I knew as we approached the work, we were going to need everybody there. And, you know, always our Title IX folks were at the table, General Counsel, Division of Student Affairs, Office of Student Affairs, and things like that. So it's been a good process for us all. Also, I'd like to just commend my staff. And so my whole team has been on Culture of Respect, including interns and student workers and our Student Wellness Ambassador team, presidents, and our team, our staff, all co-led working groups. And so as we began the work with a Culture of Respect collective, we decided after we did our core evaluation that the best way to approach this would be to form working groups. And so we formed 4 working groups. As you can see them right there. And my staff all co-led them. And we did that intentionally so we could still drive and maintain public health focus, but also keep communication lines flowing and be able to keep the teams engaged with information and notes and progress and such. And so it was actually a great process. And I'm a little bit sad as we near the end here, right? Because it's really gone by quickly. Some of the things that we're proud of are we involved our students, and they chose a new online course. It's called Not Anymore Through Student Success. And so we had been working with another vendor as well, but our students really wanted to be engaged in the process of online learning and that really foundational piece of when we invite new students and returning students to campus and how we could deliver multi-year education that would build on itself and the understanding around the complexities of this work. And as you can see, we did a interpersonal violence and sexual misconduct climate survey. This was the first one ever. And so we used the ARC3, and I'm just going to thank Cerise and Allie because it was their guidance that helped us choose a tool. And lastly, I would say that our work in Culture of Respect, our participation in Culture of Respect has just really been invaluable. And, you know, working with the other schools, drawing upon collective wisdom, guidance from Cerise and Allie, it's made all the difference. And I think overall the involvement has really set Illinois State on a path, and a path for us to still continue the work, but also advocate and elevate the prevention efforts and also response. And so I'll put my lastly, Redwood Respect is kind of our umbrella term for all of our programs. And my email was at the first part of this, and I would welcome anyone reaching out to me or things like that if I can share anything. But I'm real grateful for the opportunity today, and thank you all so much.
Thank you, Nikki. That was great to hear about how this has been really impactful for you all at Illinois State, and appreciate you sharing all of that. If anyone has any questions for Nikki, please feel free to put those in the text chat, and we, I think, should have enough time to get to them. So let's see, our last question that we asked you all was, you know, what does it take? What are those relationships and collaborations that are really going to institutionalize prevention across your campuses, make it so that prevention really is everyone's job? And so, not surprisingly, most of you pointed to collaborating with specific offices at your university, but then also I was really happy to see, you know, realizing the importance and value of partnering with folks outside of campus. So community organizations, whether that's a rape crisis center or other kind of like sexual assault response in your community. So thank you for that. We do have, I think this might be our last text chat question for you. So we've been asking you to respond to a lot of questions today and really appreciate you doing that. So our last question for you today is, what tips and resources are you looking to use to advance organizational change on your campus? So this would be such a great time if there's anything that you've heard today so far that you really want to look into a little bit more deeply, or if you have resources to share, this would be the place. And we do have some that Corey and I will share with you at the very end. But I want to hand it back over to Ali and Cerise to just share a little bit, wrapping up. If you are interested in the Culture of Respect Collective as an option for your campus, what are the next steps? What do you need to know? So, Ali, I'm going to pass it back over to you. I think that's right. And let you take it from here.
Great. You know, Cerise and I were reflecting with each other as we were listening to Nikki and Tolu and Kristen talk about how much we just genuinely like working with these folks and how happy it is how happy we are when we have some time in our day that we can dedicate to just hearing them talk and sharing with them. And so I think that's really fun for us, is that we just really enjoy being able to serve as a resource to them. So just a warm, fuzzy feeling to leave you all with on a Friday. This is a great question about what does it take to be involved. And as you I'm sure you heard bits and pieces of this through their discussions and through what we talked about earlier, but just to kind of wrap it all up, the program is a 2-year commitment, and the reason it is 2 years is to give your institution enough time to do all the things that we've talked about, to take the core evaluation, to develop a plan of targeted organizational change, to implement that, and then to reassess at the end of the process. So all of that works best when we're looking at 2 years. We do really recommend that you get support from senior level leadership to make this program happen on your campus. There's actually a letter of support that's part of our application, so from a senior level administrator. And the reason for that is so that you have someone in your corner that when it's time to make change, they're there saying, yep, I thought making change was important and I support that. And so that really just kind of benefits everyone, especially those people who are tasked with making the program happen on campus. We talked a little bit about the campus leadership team. People call it different things. Tolu talked about how they repurpose an existing Title IX workforce on their campus. We definitely don't want anyone recreating the wheel or doing more work than they have to. So whatever that looks like on your campus, whether it's starting something new or repurposing an existing group, we just want to make sure that there's commitment from across the various stakeholders on campus. And we do need a little bit of dedicated staff time. We generally have 1 to 2 point persons on campus that we work with so that they can be the boots on the ground, folks like Nikki and Tolu and Kristen, who are really making sure the program is rolling out on campus and that it's happening and things are moving forward. So that's pretty much what it takes. And in terms of what you get for that investment of your time and your energy, I'm not going to read you everything on this slide because there's a lot to cover, but the 5 big buckets you kind of see in the left are where we really want to focus. Folks get various types of professional development opportunities. Someone mentioned it, I think it was Nikki at the end, about the access to other schools in the collective, and that's really important to us. It's great to be able to ask your peers who are in the same role as you on campus or at a campus that looks like yours, how are you doing this and how are you operationalizing this? And so access to other peers in the program is hugely important. Technical assistance is obviously key to this process. Having a variety of tools that you can kind of roll out at your fingertips is great, as well as communications resources. And I do want to just highlight a couple of things that are on here that are particularly new and exciting for us that we're able to make part of the collective. Some of you may have come to the NASPA Strategies Conference in the past. That's an annual conference that's focused on sexual violence prevention response, alcohol and other drugs, mental health, and well-being. So there are some strategies registrations that come with that, access to an online foundational course in sexual violence that we're developing, as well as access to our certified peer educator train the trainer course. Something new we're doing this year is offering campus site visits as part of this process, as well as some custom branding that you can use on your website that says, hey, we're part of this process. We're going through this program, and we're working to build a culture of respect on our campus. So we talked a little bit alluded to the timeline of this, but just so people are really clear on what this looks like, we are accepting applications now for the next cohort, and that program or that cohort will kick off in January of 2019. And we'll do a little pre-work and onboarding in that time, and you'll also start getting that campus leadership team off the ground or repurposing an existing program. Then that group will come together in the spring to take the core evaluation baseline, and from that you will develop your action plan. We call it an individualized implementation plan, or IIP for short. And we'll give you some feedback on your plan and say, this is what looks amazing to us, and have you considered adding that? So that's part of that early process. And then year 2 is really when you will implement. You'll spend a good deal of that second time getting access to the professional development that you need to kind of fill in any gaps in your knowledge or skills or whatnot to be able to operationalize the plan the way that you've crafted it. And at the end of the process in November 2020, which, gosh, who can think that far ahead, but I'll tell you, it really goes fast. That is when your institution will take the core evaluation a second time, and we'll be able to look at where you were when you started the process and where you were when you finished. And just in terms of the impact, we, as Nikki said and a couple other folks said, they are our first cohort and they are wrapping up at the end of this year, and they're really excited to be able to look at that change between where they were and where they started. So we don't have that data just yet. Look for that next year, but we do have some midpoint data. And we were really excited to see that at the midpoint in this process, so 1 year in for cohort 1, they were really able to see some concrete changes on their campus. They saw increased collaboration between their departments. They saw improved buy-in from senior level administrators and enthusiasm for this process and new strategies in their toolkit and accountability for making change happen on their campus. We all know it's really hard when there's day-to-day deliverables that you're responsible for to try to chip away this kind of large-scale change. And so this is a framework and a program that kind of keeps that process moving forward, and our folks were able to see that. So the application is open. It is open as of now. You can access it on the Culture of Respect website, and we'll also put a link to the application itself right here in the chat in just a second. The deadline for applying is the end of October, so October 31st. If you have any questions or concerns about that timeline, please reach out to Therese and I, and we're happy to talk to you about what that might look like. But just keep that deadline in mind, October 31st. We have a short campus readiness assessment on our website, and it's just a series of kind of quick questions that you can ask yourself as an institution to see if this feels like a good fit for you. Maybe somebody who wasn't able to attend today might want to take a look at that campus readiness assessment. And we really encourage you to think about how you can share the cost of this program. We know that cost is a major barrier for campuses. And so think about if there's ways that you can partner with other departments or other initiatives on campus to share that cost. And most importantly, we know this looks really different on every campus. I think you kind of heard that here through our speakers. So if you have questions or concerns about what this might look like for your individual institution, please just reach out to us. We love talking to folks from every possible campus, and we would love to talk to you about what this might specifically look like. So please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you all for being here today. We really, truly appreciate your time and your interest.
Hey, Allie, so I had a question come through on my private chat, wondering if maybe this cohort, a campus isn't ready to join yet. Is there going to be a cohort after that? When could we expect that information?
Yeah, so cohorts open on an annual basis. So the next time would be in 2019, in the fall of 2019. But it's, I guess it would depend on the extent to which they are feeling like they need a little more time. Therese and I are really flexible, and so again, if you feel like the application isn't feasible by 10/31, talk to us and we'll see what we can do to accommodate that. But if it's more of a long-term question, just a heads up that the next cohort will be next year. But you can also reach out to us and just talk about what type of specific technical assistance your campus might need. If you're not ready to join the cohort, but there's other types of support that you would like to receive, just let us know and we'll, talk about what that might look like with a particular institution.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Allie. We are so excited for you all and for the next round of the collective. It's great to see the amazing impact that this cohort has had too. So we're really looking forward to hearing more again soon. And so to close out, we just wanted to reshare some resources and bring up some new resources for you all. Ali and Cerise, I'm going to go through the blueprint and the evaluation real quick, but if I miss anything, please feel free to chime in. So again, we want to provide the link in the text chat and highlight one more time the core blueprint, which you can access at the link that I just provided in the text chat to help brainstorm your next steps for institutionalizing prevention on your campus. And there's also the core evaluation that you can access online as well. Again, that link is now in the text chat and on your screen. The slides are available for download online too, in case we're going through this a little speedy. Cerise or Alia, are there any last points you wanted to add about folks using the blueprint or the evaluation?
I'm good from my end. Cerise, is there anything you wanted to jump in with?
Yeah, just one thing I wanted to mention is that the core evaluation you can get for free at that link in a PDF form. So that way you could print it out and use it. If you are interested in, if you join the program, we get you the online version. And if you are interested in that and getting the report, you can get in touch as well.
Great, thank you so much. So now we have some other resources that we wanted to share. So this first one comes to us from the Oregon Sexual Assault Task Force and work that they've done around action planning. So they were inspired by the APHA and the CDC action planning meeting SWOT analysis and the idea of flipping the SWOT analysis. However, Patrick Lemon and Meg Foster of the Sexual Assault Task Force decided to rename it to COWS and flipping the COWS. So challenges, opportunities, weaknesses, and strengths. So you can see a screenshot of that on the screen. We also have this material available for download on our website where we have the rest of our materials for our web conference posted. And I also wanted to take a moment to highlight how they also use this same format in their Campus Climate Survey Toolkit, which you can find at the link that I posted in the text chat as well as on the screen. And I'm going to hand it back to Ashley to go through the rest of our resources.
Thanks, Tori. So just a couple of PreventConnect web conferences that we have done in the past that I wanted to point to that are recorded and available for you to look at in our archive. We did a web conference having folks who wrote that CDC document on a web conference walking through each one of those components in their framework. So that web conference is available for you if you are interested in hearing more about CDC's work around campus sexual violence prevention. And then kind of the same token, the American Public Health Association has been working with CDC to do these state action planning teams. And so we actually just did a web conference at the beginning of this month, having some of the teams come on to talk about their experience from implementation to evaluation around bystander intervention programming. So that is also available for you to watch. The slides are available. Any additional resources that were shared are available. And then finally, I pointed to these at the beginning, but just a reminder, our sexual assault prevention on U.S. college campuses national stand is available on our website to download. We also have provided a link to sexual violence on campus strategies for prevention. So we have a couple of minutes left. If there are any questions that you all have for Ali and Cerise from Culture of Respect, or Kristen or Nikki, Tolu had to jump off, but if you have any questions, this would be the time to pop those into the text chat and we can get to them. Otherwise, as I said, we did record this session and we will be getting the recording up on our website in the next couple of days. So I know there are folks who are listening in on the phone who are not online with us. And so that recording will be available for you, and the web conference slides are available for you now. I'm not seeing any questions come through, so I will just give an opportunity to our guests, Nikki, Kristen, Ali, and Cerise. I mean, I want to thank you all so much for coming on, sharing about, first of all, about the Culture of Respect Collective. You know, there are so many resources out there for college campuses, and sometimes it can be really hard to sift through which one makes sense for a particular campus. So it's really great to be able to hear from you all directly so people can kind of make those decisions. And then it's so great, Nikki and Kristen, to hear what your experiences have been, and of course Toulouse as well. So I just want to appreciate you. If any of you have any last closing thoughts, you are welcome to jump in.
This is Allie. I just want to say again, thank you so much everyone for joining us, and thank you so much to our friends at PreventConnect for hosting this today. We really, really appreciate it. We consider you all to be such amazing colleagues in the field, and so it's wonderful for us to be able to join you in this way. So thank you.
Thank you. It's our pleasure. Okay, well, if there's nothing else, again, thank you all. It's Friday, so I hope you all have a good weekend. And again, please join us on these other channels online. We look forward to seeing you online again soon. This will conclude our web conference for today. Thanks again, everyone. Take good care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this PreventConnect podcast. PreventConnect is a project of the California Coalition Against Sexual Assault, with funding from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. The views presented on PreventConnect are not necessarily the views of the United States government, the CDC, or CalCASA. To learn more about PreventConnect, visit www.preventconnect.org. For more information about CalCASA's mission, or to show your support, visit calcasa.org. That's CalCasa.org.